Good evening again. Welcome. Just our evening update on April the 2nd. It's a Thursday evening. I want to speak to you just about the day, and I hope you've had a good day and a blessed day. These days, I think for many of us, are kind of running together. I want to just remind you, and I don't think I need to remind most of you, you're keeping up with this pretty well, what's going on in our world. The predicted arcs curve, if you will, of the COVID virus, how it's going to go up, is continuing to be a factor, not only locally in our state, nationally, but worldwide. It'll continue to be this way for a while. Of news of particular interest here, our first positive case from Sharp County was announced today, at least one case. It's thought to be in the northern part of our county. We don't know any more details than that other than knowing that somebody needs our prayer. And I want to remind you, I was out in the public a little bit today, not very much, but I did notice a couple of things. We were by Walmart very briefly. The front of the store is kind of rearranged. I'll just use that terminology. Everybody has to go in at one entrance, and at that one entrance there's a greeter there, and they space you out. I noticed they were making people wait, spacing them out as they went in. They have signage inside that shows you the distance that you ought to keep space. And I was encouraged that I saw more people wearing a mask today. So people are beginning to take this a little bit more serious. I'll explain. I'm going to share with you a story here in a minute. I alluded to it a couple of days ago, but I'm actually going to read you some of an actual news story. I hope will help drive home at this point. Now, like I said, it was the first positive. Right now, I don't know of one in Fulton or Izard County, and I'm not sure about Oregon County right now, but these cases are continuing to go up. And I'm going to talk about our state here in just a little bit. A couple of days ago, I mentioned a story out of the Northwest up in the Washington State area. And of course, that's where some of the first cases and major outbreaks were. There was a nursing center there that had the majority of them. But I want to explain to you why I would not personally listen to the World Health Organization or even some of our so-called experts that are going back and forth about wearing a mask. Now, we don't want to take masks obviously away that need to go to healthcare workers and people on the front lines, but I'm not talking about that. I know many of our ladies are making masks. A lot of our people have access to them. And so this is from, I believe it was the Seattle Times, but here is the headline of this article. A choir decided to go ahead with rehearsal. Now dozens of members have COVID-19 and 2 are dead. This article is from 4 days ago, excuse me. It says, with the coronavirus spreading in Washington State in early March, leaders of the Skagit Valley Chorale debated whether to go ahead with weekly rehearsal. The virus was already killing people in the Seattle area, about an hour's drive to the south. But Skagit County hadn't reported any cases. Note that. They had not reported any cases. Schools and businesses remained open, and prohibitions on large gatherings had yet to be announced. On March 6, Adam Burdick, the choir's conductor, informed of 121 members in an email that among the, quote, stress and strain of concerns about the virus, end quote, practice would proceed as scheduled at Mount Vernon Presbyterian Church. He said, quote, I'm planning on being there this Tuesday, March 10th, and hoping many of you will be too, end quote. 60 singers showed up. A greeter offered hand sanitizer at the door, and the members refrained from the usual hugs and handshakes. Quote, it seemed like a normal rehearsal except that choirs are huggy places, Burdick recalled. We were making music and trying to keep a certain distance between each other. In other words, they were doing what we're taught to do now and trying to maintain social distance and so forth. After 2.5 hours, the singers parted ways at 9 p.m. Nearly 3 weeks later, 45 have been diagnosed with COVID-19 or ill with the symptoms. At least 3 have been hospitalized and 2 are dead. The outbreak has stunned county health officials who have concluded that the virus was almost certainly transmitted through the air from 1 or more people without symptoms. Now, it's important without symptoms because we're learning more and more that one way that it's spread is by people that they don't show any symptoms, and yet they're carriers of it. It could be any one of us. I realize that. He said further, in interviews with the Los Angeles Times, 8 people who were at the rehearsal said that nobody there was coughing or sneezing or appeared ill. Everybody came with their own sheet music and put it on a table in back. Experts said the choir outbreak is consistent with a growing body of evidence that the virus can be transmitted through aerosols, that is, particles smaller than 5 micrometers that can float in the air for minutes or longer. Now I'm almost done, not with the full article, but what I'm going to read tonight. The World Health Organization has downplayed the possibilities of transmission in aerosols, stressing that the virus is spread through much larger, quote, respiratory droplets, which are emitted when an infected person coughs or sneezes and quickly fall to the surface. But a study published March 17th in the New England Journal of Medicine found that when the virus was suspended in a mist under laboratory conditions, it remained viable and infectious for 3 hours, though researchers have said that time period would probably be no more than a half an hour in real-world conditions. So I guess you could say I'm just sharing that as an admonition tonight, as a word of encouragement, that you continue to be careful when you go into places that'll be a little more crowded, in stores and places like that. Again, and this is not just to run big criticizing here, but folks, you have to take care of yourself. If you depend on experts to tell you what to do, how to handle our health and how to behave, we're going to be in a world of trouble. Because you don't have to go back very far and find that the World Health Organization just a few weeks ago was downplaying how contagious this was. They were talking about what a wonderful job a couple of months ago that China was doing and containing it. They didn't see any fears, any reasons whatsoever. So I'm simply saying sometimes you hear these big titles and these things like that. We need to be careful. You need to think for yourself. You need to understand. And I would go in public, if I had to be around people in a closed room or whatever, I would want to have a mask on. Now, as far as our state goes, I want to get back to that. The cases continue to climb rapidly. There's now 643 in the state, including Sharp County. Pulaski has the most, followed by Cleveland County, and then Benton County and Jefferson County. There's been 2 additional deaths in our state and 4 additional counties added today. Our governor took pains today. He took pains today to discuss why Arkansas does not have a lockdown and why we do not have a mandatory shelter in place. Now, most states have this. If you will look at a current map right now in the United States, and I'm going just without even looking at my notes here, the only states that I'm aware of that do not have either a partial or complete mandatory lockdown or shelter-in-place order, and by the way, those things are pretty interchangeable, pretty similar, is Arkansas, Iowa, Nebraska, and North and South Dakota. Now, to our north, Missouri, and to our west, Oklahoma, and to our southwest, Texas, those 3 states have just what we would call a partial lockdown or shelter in place. But our governor took pains to discuss his thinking, and then our health director spoke to the same thing. They believe that if Arkansans will simply continue to do what we've been doing, use good wisdom, maintain space, don't go out, don't go in places unless you absolutely have to be there, like stores and places for business, that we will be able to maintain this. There was a projection. Every state had a model, a projection that's given at the very beginning, 2 or 3 weeks ago, that estimated where each state would be as far as this arc of cases, how many active cases there would be, how many deaths there would be, how many people would be in a hospital, how many ventilators, so forth, and things they might need. To this point in time, our governor's shown us this. I've been watching this every day now for 2 weeks. He showed us that right now the arc of actual cases that are infections in the state are actually below the predicted line where they would be. It's like 300 or 400 below right now. I think we're 643, and we'd be projected to be at about 1,000 or more with the previous modeling. We want to keep it that way. He predicts and also says if we have to go to this lockdown and shut down some more business, we'd probably be knocking another 150, 200,000 people out of work. And by the way, all these other states that have lockdowns and shutdowns, they don't mean people don't get out. It just simply means that you don't get out unless you have essential business or going to a grocery store, pharmacy, or something like that. So anyway, I found that pretty interesting. Now, the number of case fatalities is climbing in our nation, and it's climbing very rapidly. I want to share a statistic with you, and you have to remember there's a lag rate. So today we have a positive in Sharp County. Well, that positive didn't just happen today. It happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. This individual contracted this virus. The news that you're going to be reading, April 15th to April 20th, April 25th, all the cases you're going to read about. And I don't know how many we'll have in this area, but all those you're going to read about and all the things that's going to be coming out of the news that day is things that's happening today. So you have to remember this lag rate. But I want you to think about this. It took 66 days in the United States for us to go from zero, that is a big zero, to 100,000 cases. It took 5 days to go from 100,000 to 200,000. That's the exponential growth that we've been warned about. We've seen it repeated now all over the world. We've seen it, in the United States, and it's happening in many other places. So Louisiana is just to the south of us. Of course, we know that Mardi Gras, New Orleans, are a lot, thousands and thousands of people there. Louisiana is way, way ahead of Arkansas right now in active cases. They're way ahead of Arkansas now in fatalities and things like that. And so our governor just really emphasized if we'll maintain discipline and continue to do what we do, we hopefully will be in good shape. Now, just briefly on international news, it's pretty much where there's already bad news, there's worse news. I don't know that there's any place that really stands out in our world right now that people say, well, this is great news. I think Southeast Asia is probably done the best right now. It's flattening the curve, and still they're having active cases there. Understand, news out of China, as we all know, is extremely unreliable and not thoroughly reported. It's that way in a lot of communist countries or totalitarian states, but apparently in at least 1 or 2 states of China, they're going back on lockdown. It's either a second wave of this or people that were never infected the first time are dealing with it. One thing that was troubling, I read, this was actually a few days ago in Spain, was that we know that nursing facilities, nursing homes are places that the patients are so vulnerable. I mean, they're just vulnerable. There's no other word to describe it. And at least at one of these nursing facilities, all the staff abandoned and left. And when the authorities got there, there was all these elderly people in there. Of course, God bless their hearts, some of them suffering from dementia and physical infirmity, and they're by themselves. And it was a very sad situation. And of course, Italy's been the hotspot of Europe. It has not peaked yet, although I think the actual number of cases is going down slightly. They still have not reached their peak and started down. This was something that's sobering. I shared a few days ago about the outbreak of the Spanish influenza of 1918-19 and how that authorities were very hard across the United States, many places, just like today. They shut down business, shut down church, shut down everything. And I relayed the story from the San Francisco Chronicle about a man getting shot on the street by a healthcare worker because he wouldn't put a mask on. That seems pretty tough. Well, the Philippine president, Rodrigo Duterte, he has told security forces, according to the Daily Sabah, they should shoot dead anyone causing trouble in areas locked down due to the coronavirus pandemic. That's terrible. When you think about how many people in that country are living in poverty and impoverished lives in a lot of places in the world right now. They're just living in poverty. And these people are going to be trying to scrounge, trying to get food, and we don't know what's going to happen there. But again, I say that even in this pandemic, we are so blessed to live where we live and have the resources that we have. And I just want to say in summary, these are extremely hard times for everyone. Death is hard anywhere, anytime. Unexpected death especially. Today, one of our families was touched by unexpected death. Matt and Julie Helms' family, Julie's stepfather in Sheridan, apparently died of a heart attack. Had been healthy, had no previous illnesses. And as I prayed with our dear sister on the phone today, I know her heart is broken and crushed, and she's going through what so many are experiencing now. She can't be with her loved ones to grieve as she would like to grieve, and just to be able to come together. And so many are dealing with this all across the country. You can't even have what you'd like to have, a good memorial service and where people can come and share memories and events. And we've got weeks and weeks more of this to come. I was counseling yesterday, and I've had several questions brought up to me about weddings. Not actually from within our church. These are people without our church that I happen to know. I know of one couple that they're probably going to go to a justice of the peace. I know of others that have invested a lot of money, a lot of planning in weddings, and there's even disagreements between bride's family and groom's family. What do we do? And these are things that we may laugh it off, but it's serious business to people. And there's so many stressors that we're beginning to see. What about graduation? Man, it's always a great honor here at our church and Of course, anywhere schools are for people to graduate, we can honor them. We're not going to be able to do it, at least like we've done it in previous days. And then continue to pray for our missionaries. I don't know everything that's going on in their life, but I do know that ours that are in Panama, there's already places where there's looting, crime is going up, violence is going up, and sadly domestic violence is going up. So please keep our missionaries much in prayer. And I just want to finish by saying that we're going to stay the course. We'll adapt, and I believe by God's grace we'll thrive. Everybody else is going through these challenges. We will too. I'm looking forward to trying to get by and to see more of you. I want to share just a couple special prayer needs here, and I'm going to finish with a scripture, but I want you to pray. There's a special request been asked of the Stevens family, Krishna Branda, and then I want you to remember Miss Janice Mitchell, their little neighbor there. Janice lost her husband recently. Of course, pray for Julie Helms and her family as they mourn the loss of her stepfather. And then Mike Henry. Mike's in ICU in Baxter Regional in a very serious condition. My wife and I were able to go out and pray with Miss Ruth and Zach and Sierra today. And again, just at a distance, I have a young pastor friend that contacted me early this morning. He woke up with a fever, just raging body aches all over. Of course, he's concerned that he could have this virus. Prayerfully and hopefully he doesn't. It's something else. We did find out today that one pastor we knew had somebody in their church that had possibly been exposed. They got a negative test back today, and so we were grateful for that. But I want to close tonight by just reading from 2 Corinthians chapter 12. And I've mentioned these scriptures probably 2 or 3 times at least over the past week and a half. The Apostle Paul was praying, and if you know the Lord Jesus Christ, you know your Bible, you know that he had a thorn in the flesh. He had an affliction that he asked God, God, would you deliver this from me? He said, thrice I prayed. And we know that Paul's prayer was not an idle prayer. It was no doubt pouring his heart, soul, and spirit into that prayer. God, would you deliver whatever affliction it was, this thorn in the flesh? He said Satan had given it to buffet him. He asked God, but God chose not to answer the prayer in the way that Paul requested. But he did answer the prayer. And Paul shares that with us. He said in verse 9, and he said unto me, that is the Lord speaking unto Paul, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Ladies and gentlemen, we can know that in this circumstance we're in, and what you're facing right now, and I know some of you have some needs that I don't know about, and I may never know about. You may want to keep them to yourself, and I understand that. I know many of you are very private. I understand that. I'm that way with some things in my life too. But I want you to know this, that if the Lord has allowed this, and maybe it's something that's not even directly related to the coronavirus, it could be something else, but if it's something that's happened to you, understand this. If you're a child of God and your heart is yielded to him, his grace is going to be sufficient. And in your weakness and my weakness, his strength is going to be revealed. And brothers and sisters, at the end of the day, more important than our economy, more important than this building being full of people, more important than whatever you and I might think, is that the glory of God be known and that our Christ be exalted. Our weakness in this present hour is the very platform for his grace to do mighty and wondrous things. I want to say good evening to you. God willing, we'll see you tomorrow evening. And again, just share some thoughts, but stay encouraged in the Lord. He is able.